We have arrived. This is Webb Parton, your host, and we welcome you to the Free Range Dogs podcast. This is a place where we stake out a shady spot and talk about all things dog. Find yourself a soft piece of grass, spin a few circles, plop down, rest your feet, and join us in this joyful conversation. Hi, this is Webb Parton with Free Range Dogs podcast, and I have a very special guest today. This is my spouse, partner of, so many years.
We don't want to count.
Yes. My wife, Nicole. I asked her ahead of time how I should introduce her, and I think it probably best to let her make the introductions.
Okay, well, I'm Nicole, and Webb and I have been together for like 40 plus years as dog lovers. We've led a dog lover's life, but like anything in life, I keep learning new things and being better at them. And I'm here because I have, of the 3 dogs we have, one of them is like my special little boy. He's a Clumber spaniel named Rafe. And I've had some adventures with him over the last few years.
Well, he is a bit of a curmudgeon.
Yes, he is.
We have 2 other dogs in the house. We have a German wirehaired pointer female named Scout, who's typically the model citizen.
Yeah, she's a good girl.
Yeah. But like all female wirehair, she sort of monitors the domain. She lets her wishes be known from the sofa. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then Drake, both Scout and Drake are about the same age. Drake is a yellow lab, American blood, and just a machine. Big, long-legged, lanky boy that has to run. The 3 of them really interact pretty well together.
They do. They're all very good friends.
Yeah. But poor little Rafe, he was bred to do a certain thing, Clumber spaniel, kind of built like a badger. Short-legged. Mm-hmm. He likes birds, likes to carry birds. But he's show blood. Originally, Rafe came to us. Nick's mom had some challenges with cognizant mental stuff at the end of her life. And Rafe was going to be her little guy. Mm-hmm. And that didn't work out.
It didn't work out at all. It lasted, I was looking through my pictures the other day, and it lasted a week. And he was just a little too big for her. She ended up with a little Chiweenie, which was perfect.
Yeah.
So Rafe ended up with us, and I had been with her. I had been instrumental in finding him. We thought he was a Cocker Spaniel. That's how he was advertised when we got him. And Webb had always told me I would love to have a Cocker Spaniel. So Rafe became my dog, and we've had him a few years now.
And he was a little guy. He was a little guy when we got him.
Yeah, they said he was a year old, but he was losing his baby teeth when we got him.
Yeah.
So we figured he was actually quite a bit younger than we thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Now his blood is show, and so he just doesn't have the genetics, to keep up with the other 2 dogs in the house. But he is his own person, mm-hmm. or personality, and so
he has a definite personality,
right?
Yeah, and a glower, and
right.
He'll come sit near me when he wants to, and there's nothing I can do to convince him otherwise. Which I guess is entertaining a bit, but it also makes me sad sometimes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, we are talking today because the focus of this podcast initially was going to be another training podcast. We had done one earlier on rope and check cords, and I wanted to follow that up with one about voice, which is a pretty good intro to Nicole and Rafe and their kind of special relationship. The 2 bigger dogs go with me, and we take them out in the field. We go hunting, but little Rafe is a home guy, mm-hmm. and so that kind of bothers him a bit, because I think in his heart of hearts, he wishes legs were longer and
wants to run with the big dogs.
He wants to run with the big dogs. So he gets special time with Nicole. Mm-hmm. And Nicole has been learning how to handle Rafe in a free-range dog situation.
Yes, because we talk about this because I've been with a expert dog trainer for over 40 years. But I was busy with my own life with working and taking care of my mom the last few years and things like that. So I didn't really have a chance to do more than love on my dog at home. So when the pandemic hit and I had to work from home, I started taking daily walks with him because we both needed to. Let's put it that way. And I'd never had much luck in my entire life, even though I've always had dogs with walking a dog, because the big issue I'd always had was a dog pulling and tugging on their leash. And so right off the bat, to my delight, Rafe never did that. He never did that. He never pulled and tugged, and he was content to walk along with me. But I still had concerns because there's part of my walk is in the neighborhood in the car, and of course I'm going to have him on the leash, but then another part of my walk is not. And I would love to let him run free like a free-range dog, but didn't have confidence in how I could do it. So actually, I've been listening and paying attention to my husband, which after 40 years, I continue to learn things, and we've been coming along on that.
And the issue was being able to interact with Rafe and feel safe with him. And
and trust him. Yeah.
So a lot of that's confidence.
Mm-hmm.
If you're confident handling a dog, and when you see a good dog handler, someone who's very intentional about the way that they interact with the dog, they have done it enough. They have enough experience that they're confident in the way they approach their interactions with the dog. In a dog's culture, if you're not in charge, they are. That's just the nature of that sort of dominance interplay. And so dogs look to us to be in charge. And if we're not, then they'll take a shot at it. So that was kind of the issue because Nicole was a little bit unsure of how to proceed. And she was concerned, we live in a place where there are things that eat little dogs.
Well, and on one of my walks this summer, I came across a baby mountain lion. So, yeah. There are things to worry about.
Yeah. So, he needs to be under control. Mm-hmm. And, ideally, when you live with the dog, you build that interaction. Dogs talk through their eyes. If we want a dog to do something, the first thing you do is you get their attention. Mm-hmm. And they look at you, and you look at them, and you know what they're asking, and they know what you're saying. And so you need to be on that level with the dog. Voice is a funny thing, because folks will use voice like they're talking to a human, and that's really not the way to proceed. YouTube pieces you'll see where someone has their dogs beside them, and they pick up a phone, and they have a fake phone conversation that they're on, where they are talking to someone saying, "Oh, yes, I thought we would go to the park and get bones, and maybe we can go by and get some treats." And every time you see a keyword that the dog understands, you see the ears go up and eyes open up. All right. And so, they do understand words. Mm-hmm. They do get that. Mm-hmm. And ideally, when you interact with a dog, there's always going to be conversation. You're going to be using voice. Mm-hmm. But that's really not the way you handle a dog. When you handle a dog, you're watching what they're doing, and you are attempting to break any impulses that you don't want them to do. So you see a dog thinking about doing something. You see a dog thinking about going and chasing that skunk. Mm-hmm. Okay. Once the movement has started, it's gravity. You're behind the curve, and more than likely you're going to be doing some shampooing, before the evening's over. Dog shampooing. So
tomato juice,
yeah. So when you use voice, you watch the dog, you see them key on this movement, you see the muscles tense that they're going to move, and you just use a simple vocal cue to break that impulse. You just go, eh. Now, when we communicate as humans, we use inflection with voice. So you can say now, or now, or now. Essentially means the same thing, but it's said in a different way. And that inflection gives it another meaning. Okay. And so ideally, you use voice in the calmest, most intentional way. So you give that cue in a very soft, direct way. And if you have to, you can go up the ladder. But the point is not to communicate a thought or a concept. It's to jar the dog's brain process. They're starting to think about doing something, and then this overload comes in, and they hear it, and they're back with you. And then you've got them in control again, and you can proceed. Now, ideally, when you train, you should always have structure in place and available. And that means that with a dog like Rafe, you started with a leash. And you had multiple walks with that leash.
Yes.
And he learned what the expectation was.
Yes.
This is how it's supposed to be done. Okay. And you get to the place where you can remove that leash. And he still knows what the expectation is at that point.
Yeah.
And you have your voice to enforce compliance should you see a deviation from what that norm would be. Now, should you trust that on the road beside cars? No.
No.
If you have structure available and it's a safety issue, then use it. But you're on that part of the trail that Nick is normally walking that's, in National Forest and out in the open place, and Rafe is able to do some perusing and
exploring,
sniffing, exploring.
A lot of joyful sniffing.
A lot of tail wiggling and sniffing. Then that leash is really a hindrance to that. And so you're able to take that leash off. And I know that you've built confidence now.
Yes.
Okay, and you feel better about that process.
I do. Yeah, because I start off my walk with him off the lead, actually. And we can go quite a ways before he needs to get back on. And what Webb has taught me over the years is that the dog needs to pay attention to me. I mean, not that I'm not going to pay attention to him, but it's like his job to keep track of me. So it took me a while to believe that and trust that, but I'm finding that to be the case. And so I will see Rafe turn around and check in on me, and then I can, if I need him to come back, he'll come on back. And then if we're coming to the place where I need to put the lead back on him, then it's working out real well. He's not fighting me to put the lead back on him because he got his chance to run and he knows he'll get to run again. So everything he said that Webb has told me is true.
Now, folks, I have proof now. I've been vindicated.
Well, I mean, I was just thinking while we're sitting here talking about, we started out, we met in Southern California, very urban area. That's where I grew up. And we always had a dog, but we always had a backyard. So walking wasn't really something we did. And so gradually, as our life became more rural, it was something that was more of a pleasant thing because we've always had our house set up so dogs can come in and out as they need. They're independent. So. Well,
little Rafe enjoys that time. And he looks forward to it.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the highlight of his day when you're going to go for that walk. And that's really important because, they're just like us. I mean, they need those breaks and they need that connection.
Right.
And I've been very careful, because Rafe, in his heart of heart, he wants to be a big dog.
Well, if I could go back for a moment, you were talking about eye contact, making eye contact and communicating with the dog. And as I said, I was involved in getting Rafe for my mother. And I remember the first time I met him because I took him for a little walk around the block, to make sure that I thought he would be a good dog for her. And I remember making eye contact with him and making genuine eye contact, like we connected. And it was that eye contact that convinced me to go ahead and bring him home for my mother. So it started with that. And I think because of that, he kind of always had a connection with me, even though, like I said, he was at my mother's a week. But it was like we just had this built-in connection from the beginning. So,
well, that's the hard thing. Mm-hmm. You know how it is when in the early days when we were running a training kennel here, we'd get a class in.
Yeah.
And typically a class is 3 months. Mm-hmm. And so at the end of 3 months, everybody goes home one day, and on the next day, everybody new comes.
Right.
And so we'd have 10 dogs show up that day. And I'd kind of assessing, okay, what have we got here? Mm-hmm. And so much of that is just initial eye contact.
Yeah.
Because a dog that's furtive when they won't make eye contact with you, they turn their head away, they don't engage. Mm-hmm. That don't work.
Yeah, and I think that was in the back of my head when I made that connection with Rafe from the very beginning. Is I remembered all those experiences and the things that you've taught me about dogs and interacting with them. So,
right.
Yeah. So I remember that to this day, how it felt when we connected. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, often in a training situation, I would have to wait. And we used a chain gang. We trained communally so that all the dogs were lined up on a long length of chain, heavy chain that was hard to move by little drop leads. So if one dog was a curmudgeon, didn't want to get involved in the program, laid down on the chain, didn't want to look in the direction of where the activity was going on, that got really hard because every other dog was jumping and leaping, and that chain's just like an electrical current. Stuff's going.
Excitement and enthusiasm.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that chain's wiggling on both sides. That recalcitrant dog gets bucked off. They have to come through. And there were some dogs where trauma, maybe it's genetic breeding, something's wrong.
Yeah.
You have to wait for that. It's a process of evaporation sometimes. It's not a thing you say, I'm going to fix this. It's a thing that you wait until it evaporates away, and maybe the dog just needed a little bit of time.
Right.
But boy, you can just see it when you work with a dog. When they're not willing to look at you, they are not interested.
Right.
And so with Nicole's interaction with Rafe, right from the get-go, you knew there was a spark there.
Right. I knew there was a connection. Yeah.
Now, how has it worked with voice with you and Rafe?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, he is a curmudgeon. So I may attempt to communicate with him with language, but he decides if he will respond or not. And that's around the house. When we're out on a walk, it tends to be different, I think, because it's just the two of us and we're out on an adventure and he is keyed into me and I think he wants to please me. So we keep doing this. So yeah.
And so you can make a sound and he immediately cues on you and you have his attention.
Yes.
Okay. And that's, in handling dogs in the field, when I was guiding clients, I don't make much sound when I'm with dogs. I mean, the only time I'll communicate with a dog is when I have something to say.
Yeah.
And there's a term called hacking, and I will hear it over and over again when I'm with someone in the field. They're handling their dogs. Tend to use voice a lot.
Yeah.
They literally hack the dog with sound. And it's like any conversation. If you're with a human being and that human being is talking at you a whole lot, pretty soon you just don't hear it anymore.
So by hacking, do you mean like if you're trying to get the dog's attention and you just...
Yeah. And often it would be a person who is unsure, concerned, fearful,
anxious.
They're worried they're going to lose the dog. They're worried that the dog is going to do something wrong.
Yeah.
And so they are constantly berating or interrupting the dog. And, it's because I tend to watch dogs work. Okay, I want to see what they're picking up through their nose because they're trying to find birds. And if their brain is engaged and they're using their nose trying to locate birds and someone is behind them saying, hey, get over here. I want you.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Costs you a lot of birds.
We've talked over the years because I was a special education middle school teacher and counselor for my career. And we've talked over the years about how similar our jobs were, because I too would have a brand new group of students, at the beginning of the year, and then throughout the year get new kids in. And there'd be a similar process that would go on, a similar evaluation on my part on connection and trying to get them to work cohesively as a group. And then when you talk about classroom discipline, same concept. Talking at the kids all the time, so that pretty soon nothing you say is of value is pointless. It doesn't give you anything that you need. They need to know that when you're talking, it's important and you need to listen. So same thing with the dogs.
And so much of what we had said earlier, you have to exhibit confidence.
Yes, absolutely. That you will be listened to. Yes.
Or they will eat you alive.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So not much difference between dogs and people, I guess. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, what do you want to see with Mr. Rafe? Are you comfortable now that when you're under walks? And
I'm more comfortable. I'm concerned as he's aging. I think his hearing is not as good as it used to be. And so I think sometimes, like, if I might think he's being stubborn, but I think actually maybe, when I'm on a walk, I think maybe my voice isn't carrying, because I tend to have kind of a quiet voice to begin with, that doesn't penetrate necessarily. So that's one of the current concerns I have. And I have concerns about encountering things on our travels, like encountering an unfriendly dog, because he is a smaller dog, encountering an aggressive dog. And in fact, I told you about my misadventure earlier this summer. We went for an adventure, and I was veering towards an area I hadn't walked in before. And as Webb mentioned, we live, adjoining a national forest. So we were walking up there, and this aggressive dog started following us, and he had a chain hanging from his neck, which led me to believe he had broken away from some unfortunate situation. And I wasn't totally sure that he was aggressive, but he made me really uncomfortable, and it just kind of short-tailed our whole trip. I got Rafe on the leash right away, and then got out of the area. So things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are tools you can use. Mm-hmm. And because when I work with deaf dogs, when we're doing aversion work,
yeah,
it's amazing how little sound matters to them, in the long term.
Yeah.
Because so much of the way a dog perceives the world is through their nose. So you have the option, if a dog is losing their hearing or does go deaf, you can use a vibration from a collar.
Oh, yeah.
So you can carry a transmitter with you and touch a button, and it's just like a cell phone page.
Yes,
and they feel that little, and they know, oh, that's Mom looking for me.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That probably would make me feel more secure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we had talked about other stuff. I got you some bear spray and that if you need it, it's sitting on a shelf. I don't know that you're going to use it.
I haven't used it yet, but there had been times, or even like, I remember being out on a trail, and sometimes you'll encounter people that seem a little sketchy, and then suddenly you realize, gosh, I'm a woman alone out here. I don't have cell phone service, and I have my little dog.
You're
who's not much of a guard dog.
Clubber.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah.
You'll curmudgeon them to death. Yeah.
So it's not a bad idea, if you're hiking alone, and yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's ways to address those sorts of concerns. And again, all introductions. And I think I did color introductions with Rafe. He knows what that is. Yeah. So it would be a very simple thing for you to just go ahead and put a collar on him. And does that, at that point, when you think that his hearing is compromised enough, then you have a redress already hardwired.
And what a wonderful thing. What a wonderful thing. One more tool in my belt to feel confident.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And Rafe's about 10 years old now?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we know how that plays.
I don't want to think about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I have been very conscious that he is your dog. And
may I point out, that's because during our entire life together, almost every dog has been your dog, just because Webb takes them out hunting, and that's what, those have been the kind of dogs we've had. But I've always wanted to have my own dog. My entire life I've wanted to have my own dog. So yes, he's been a very precious little companion for me.
Well, I have tried to stay out of that mix.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah.
But he does adore you as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But he likes Mom.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so I've always wanted that relationship between you and him to be a special thing.
It is.
For the both of you.
And I thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah. Little Mr. Rafe. Now, you have been with me when trainings, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so you know how to use a rope. I don't know that you've used a collar much.
No, I never have.
Yeah.
I never have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't had occasion to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we do have Drake.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay. And
he's a whole other story.
He's a whole other beast.
Just so people understand, he's just a very big, passionate, strong dog. He's a lovely dog, very loving and very in tune with our emotions and emotional himself.
Yeah.
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 But he loves to run.
Yes. Yeah. And he came to us at 4 years old. And the issue there had been that he was getting out and disappearing. He came from northern Utah. And, that there's still a little widget in there in that brain of his that's wobbly. Because I'll see it on his face.
Yep.
He'll get that look and he'll say, well, maybe I should just take a lap or two around the neighborhood.
Let's test the boundaries.
Yeah, let's see that. And so, and I've, worked with Drake and he's a fully trained dog. I mean, he's a real good pickup dog. But here about a month ago, he decided that he was going to take a flyer. And I was doing something. He was out with me, and I was engaged in what I was doing, and I was on the property somewhere. And then I look up and he's gone. And I had a collar on him, so I toned him, and he's gone.
Yeah. He was too far?
Yeah.
He was outside the boundary?
I just touched him with tone.
Yeah.
And that's normally how I communicate with Drake.
Right.
Because he'll move out of it. He'll get down, and we live up on a ridge line. There's a valley on one side of us and a little valley on the other. The road comes up. But he'll get out a little bit, and he'll be out busy and going through brush and looking for quail and that kind of stuff. And so I can use a whistle cue if he's close enough for that. But I'm typically on high ground and I'm looking down and he's below in the valley on the far slope of the hill going up the other side. I can see him. I know he's there.
Right.
I could use a big whistle.
Yeah.
But I just tone him. Okay. And I know that with that, because he's wearing that e-collar, that if the tone doesn't work, then I can start walking up the ladder, just reminding him, hey, buddy,
time to come back.
Yeah, it's time to come. You got a collar on now. This can, that sensation will find you eventually if you don't listen to it. But what he did on that day was he just took off. He outran the collar, I think.
Yeah.
And so I went down the hill to look for him and got a phone call. Someone had gathered him up.
Thank goodness. Yeah. Kind people here.
Yeah. And so that kind of outlines the benefit of having structure in place so that, you're using it to communicate and you're just toning them. But when you tone them and it doesn't work for whatever reason, then you can start using sensation and going up the ladder to convince the dog.
To get his attention.
Right. Yeah. Now, we had that little falling out because he knew that he knew he was in trouble.
Yeah.
When I picked him up, he knew he was in trouble. He was sheepish. And I don't think that was necessarily on me. I think that's old stuff with him. Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
Yeah.
Like, because from what you had told me, it looked like because they had trouble managing him, because he's a real, as you said, high-powered personality, that he was alone much of the time outside in a kennel.
Yeah.
And so he kind of was maybe missing that human bond, that connection.
Yeah, or he wasn't able to do what he wanted to do early on.
Maybe.
Maybe there's something.
We don't know.
We don't know. Yeah.
We don't know, but he's a classic case. You give him an inch, he's going to take a mile or two.
And he'll do it real quick.
Yeah.
He's got legs to cover ground.
Exactly. Yeah. And you want to keep him safe. And
right.
So
that structure then allows us to still engage with that dog.
Right.
Right. And now this had been, about 2 weeks after the fact. He's wearing a collar. I normally have sort of a protocol. We call it checking the perimeter, where I'll put a collar on.
It's an excuse to go out running with the dogs on the property.
Yeah. So I'll put a collar on him and I'll open the door and let him sit, and then I'll release him to go. And he has sort of a little milk run he makes, and he knows that I'm going down to check the RV to make sure no mice have gotten in the traps. Okay. So I will go down and walk down the hill, get to the valley, do a loop around the RV, check everything out, do some other, just down in that little area. And he knows that he can come down there with me, and he has his places. He knows where the quail come in to get feed. So he'll go and he'll look for them. But he knows he has to pay attention. Yeah. Because eventually I'm going to turn around and go back up the hill. And it's a little game we play, because I'll then turn around to go back up the hill. And he's watching me, and maybe he'll stop and look at me. Or maybe I have to give him a, whistle cue, and he'll come, or he'll look at me. He asks the question, do we have to go now? I stand on the hill. Maybe I give him another minute. Okay. And then I turn around to start to go uphill. And that means, yeah, buddy, we got to go now.
Right.
And then we come up and we scoop the dog yard, and he'll go in with me, and he'll supervise the scooping of the dog yard.
It's important for dogs and people have little jobs to do, right?
Yeah.
Purpose in life.
Yeah. So he knows that, and he knows that he'll then come out. We got to walk over to where the bucket is to empty the carrier for the cleaning the yard. And then I changed the protocol a little bit, and I went back down, and I had to, on the lower section, I had to check. We have a scrap metal thing that we're removing, and so I had to go down and kind of look at stuff, and I was sort of getting
were you kind of preoccupied with that, not paying attention?
Yeah. But that's how it had happened before. So I was sort of keeping track, and I'm watching him, and he's not there. And so I tone him. Right. Low one, medium one, high one, low two. And then I see him down on the road. Yeah. Running like heck to get back up the hill because he doesn't want that collar going higher. Right, right. So it worked that time because he was still within the perimeter. Yeah. I could still reach him. Right. But it shows just how quick he can get away. Yeah. And he came in very sheepish. You know that look he has when he's thinks he's done something wrong. Right. Okay. As we said, he's very emotional. Yeah. But at this point, with our previous labs, wasn't an issue. They're with you. Yeah. With the Scout, she's with you. Okay. Yeah. But we can't trust him. Right. And we had a long conversation about that because it makes both of us sad, and probably particularly you, because that we can't do that. But we just had to acknowledge the fact that for whatever reason, if he's given the opportunity, he's going to run. Yeah. Now, and it's interesting, if he's given the opportunity from here. Yes. Okay. But in the field, he's like glue. Or if if I'm holding a gun, he's for the hunting. Yeah. He's scanning the skies looking for birds. Right. Okay. Right. So it's not that it handicaps what he needs to do in terms of his vocation. But when he's in leisure time... Exactly. Yeah. It's an issue for us with our lifestyle. Yes. That we need to be sure that we keep a real tight look on him since we don't have our property all fenced in. Right. Yeah. Right. So it just sort of delineates that it's never a constant. I mean, you have to modify everything in any relationship you have with the dog. Or person. The person, exactly. Exactly. the dog chain or the classroom. Right. We're all unique. All have different aspirations and different ways of relating to the world and to others. And, and so you have to modify it accordingly.
Right. And our primary goal is to keep him safe. And so, that's why we have to acknowledge the reality of who he is in order to be able to do that. Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Acknowledge the reality of who he is.
Right.
Because he's not going to change at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, it doesn't affect him in the field. Mm-hmm. And he's just a phenomenal field dog. I mean, and man, the boy can run. He can just run.
Yeah.
But, if I'm taking him for a walk, I just got to be conscious of that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's Scout, our middle child, who's perfect.
Yeah.
And we raised her from a puppy.
Right.
And she was a little wildcat when she was young.
Right.
We had a hard time with her as a puppy.
Right. Yeah. And it was the needle teeth.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. She was just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know if we'd had him as a baby. I don't know.
Yeah. We don't know.
You just
don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, Scout is collar trained. Mm-hmm. Scout will respond to a cue. Mm-hmm.
She's very calm. Mm-hmm. She's reliable and dependable. She's not going to take off.
Right.
Yeah.
So we got these three personalities.
Exactly.
We live with, and they kind of make it work. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And in their downtime, Rafe and Drake love to play. They just wrestle like they're brothers. Mm-hmm. A Scout looks on, growls every now and then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, disdain, a look of disdain.
Right, right.
Well, has that helped you in terms of the way the confidence you feel about Drake? How long did it take for you to on those walks before you?
It actually took a while, and I guess here's the thing. You can learn to do this like on your very first podcast with Harry. Mm-hmm. You can learn to do this no matter what your age is or your experiences so far. If you want to experience the joy of having a dog running off his leash while you're hiking somewhere, you can definitely learn how to do that. And that's great. That's an exciting kind of concept. I think that I probably would like to learn how to use the collar with Rafe so that I will feel more confident if he can't hear me, that I can get his attention. And because I don't want him to run out in the street, or I want him to come back if I see a danger ahead that maybe he hasn't recognized, or like that day when we saw the baby mountain lion. It actually happened to be on the street, so he was on my leash. But if he hadn't been, I don't know what he would have done. He might have been curious. I don't know. So it'd be good to have other tools in my tool belt. Sure. Yeah, but I do feel like it has been eye-opening, I guess, to say, well, gosh, Webb was right about this.
That's the second time, folks.
Exactly. But there's no substitute for actually doing it yourself. You have to just get out there and do it and try it. And like you said, have confidence. And I think the only way you can get confidence is to do something. So it's a circular kind of experience. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the tools as they stand now, e-collars, when I started in the beginning, I mean, they were arcane.
But like any modern technology, e-phones, etc., everything's improved and easier to use, probably safer to use. And
I use, professional level collars, which are bigger transmitters, that sort of thing. But for him, for a walk with him, there's tiny little units.
Right.
Well made, Dogtra makes a nice little unit, so that the transmitter is not this cumbersome thing that's hanging on your body.
Right, because I don't want one more cumbersome thing hanging on me when I'm walking.
Right. And so it's a pretty simple thing. Once you start with a collar, it's just rote memory. They're easy to use.
Well, and the other thing that I think is a great idea, and like when we were talking about Drake as well, taking off, we've been fortunate to have kind neighbors that are, you know, just without even thinking, will grab him and give us a call because our number's on the collar. But having a GPS unit as well, so you feel confident. If you lose track of your dog, you can find him.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a huge feature.
Right.
Because I've been with you over the years, as we've said, when you were training dogs, you know, when you'd have runners out in the field, and that was a big deal before you had a GPS collar. So.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And our only recourse then was telemetry gear, and that's you know, cumbersome, and it's you know, it's not that easy to use.
Well, I remember you spending, you know, 3 days and nights out with a friend looking for a dog. So much better idea.
Yes. Yeah.
GPS collar.
Yeah.
So the little units you're talking about, do they incorporate both of them?
Well, some do. They they have GPS electronic collars. But I guess it's just a personal choice. They tend to be more expensive, and they tend to be kind of limiting in a way because it might be that you want to use a GPS and you're not using a dog collar, or vice versa.
Yes.
So for me, my sense is to have two separate tools.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. That might be hard for someone like me, though, you know, that isn't as experienced.
Well, if you're, let's say you're backcountry and you're walking a dog, you're running a dog with you, that GPS is actually how you're maneuvering yourself. And you just have a transmitter. So you're right. It just depends on what a person's individual needs are, how they want to proceed with
right. But there are options.
Yeah. I have my GPS units that we're currently running with their dogs are just to find the dogs. They have no e-collar component to it.
To communicate with them.
Right. And and when Tritronics first came out with their version of the GPS incorporated training collar, they gave me one to play with and test for a time. And I did use it. I think I used it for part of a season. I might have been guiding at that point. And it works. But, you know, I've used the tool for so many years that...
It's like a second nature with you, no doubt.
Right.
Yeah.
And this was a modification of that basic design. And I'm sure if that was the only tool I was using, then I would get used to that as well. But again, it's a choice. The technology is there now. Yeah. And it's available. Price has gone down. So it's more affordable. Yeah. And there are multiple companies now producing that sort of thing. Right. And boy, it's just a world. There's nothing worse than having a dog with you and then not having a dog with you. Yeah, I know. I've been there with you. Yeah. You don't know what happened. You know, so sheer relief of being able to look at a little screen and know that they're 600 yards that way. Right. Right. Because, I mean, like if I'm with Rafe and what if something happened to him, you know, you never know. And you train dogs to avoid rattlesnakes, but even so, sometimes they're caught by surprise, right? Yeah. So you never know, and might want to find your dog because maybe they can't find their way back to you. Yeah, and particularly with a little guy like Rafe. Yeah. Coyotes, lions. I know. You know, it's he's going to get invited to lunch by a lot of different critters. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. So we got to keep an eye on him. Keep him close enough. Yeah. Yeah. Well, with that, I think we've covered the topic pretty well. All right. Do you have any last thoughts on this? Well, I guess just that I have been following your lead here on how to have a free-range dog. And so far, it's worked beautifully. And I think it's like anything you learn, there's different stages and steps that you have to go through. Like you have to crawl before you can walk kind of thing. Same concept here. And like you have said over and over, I mean, the primary thing you start with is a relationship with your dog. You have to have a relationship connection with your dog, live with your dog, have an intimate life with your dog where they're connected with you, and then you go from there. So, I look forward to more adventures with Rafe. Sounds like a new television series. Well, folks, with that, we are going to sign off. We're wishing you that you have that joy and that connection, that you're able to take your little Rafe dogs and feel safe and feel confident and spend that time with them. With that, this is Webb Parton and Nicole, and we are going to sign off. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
If you like this episode, I invite you to visit our website, freerangedogs.com. It's where you can find the stuff you need to live the free-range dog lifestyle. I want to help you with that. Book a consultation call or an in-person training, attend one of our ongoing events, or join our online membership program. We got it all on freerangedogs.com. All right, it's time to head back to the truck and the water bucket for the thirsty dogs. This is Webb Parton signing off, wishing you the boundless joy that comes when you share the outdoors with your best friend.